WNBA finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, it's obviously...
They offered her historic money. They put $1 million salary on the table, thinking it would be enough to silence the critics and secure the future of the league. It was supposed to be the moment the WNBA finally arrived, the moment the new era was cemented with ink on paper. But Caitlin Clark and the rest of the Players Association just did the unthinkable. They said no. They didn't just hesitate, they walked away from the table completely. And now, the fallout from that rejection has reportedly claimed its biggest victim yet. We are hearing shockwaves from the league office that Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is officially done. The refusal of this new CBA deal wasn't just a negotiation tactic, it was a vote of no confidence that has shattered the WNBA's leadership structure. The league thought they could buy peace with a paycheck, but they completely misunderstood the revolution happening inside their own locker rooms. To understand why the commissioner is reportedly packing her bags, and why this specific rejection was the final nail in the coffin, you have to look at the offer that was just rejected. Sources say the league finally caved and offered a structure where top stars could earn over $1 million a year in base salary and bonuses. To the casual fan, that sounds like a massive win. It's a huge jump from the peanuts players were making just a few years ago, where the max salary hovered around $200,000. It was supposed to be the golden ticket that saved the 2026 season and prevented a labor stoppage. But the players, led by the massive leverage of stars like Clark, Reese, and Stewart, walked away. Why? Because they realized that $1 million is nothing compared to the billions the league is projected to make. You have to look at the math that the players are looking at. The WNBA recently secured a historic media rights deal valued at over $2 billion over the next decade. That is transformative money. That is the kind of money that changes generational wealth. When the league came to the table offering $1 million salary cap for top players, the union realized that the owners were trying to pull a fast one. They were trying to lock the players into a fixed number, while the owners kept the vast majority of the upside. The players don't just want a higher allowance, they want a piece of the pie. They want revenue sharing. They want a percentage of every jersey sold, every ticket scanned, and every commercial aired. By rejecting this deal, they didn't just reject a contract, they rejected the entire business model that Cathy Engelbert built her reputation on. That rejection seems to be the final straw for Cathy Engelbert. Her tenure has been defined by a desperate struggle to balance the old guard of the WNBA with the explosion of the new era. For the last 2 years, she has been walking a tightrope, and she finally fell off. To understand why she is reportedly resigning, you have to go back to the absolute chaos of the last season. It was a PR nightmare from start to finish. It started with the travel issues, where players were forced to fly commercial, while charter flights were only given selectively. Then came the prioritization rule that forced players to choose between the WNBA and lucrative overseas contracts, effectively taking money out of their pockets. But the real damage was done in the public eye. Remember the interview that changed everything? The one on CNBC where Engelbert was asked about the dark side of the new fan engagement, the racism, the online harassment, and the toxicity directed at players. Instead of defending her athletes, instead of drawing a hard line in the sand and condemning the hate, she pivoted to a corporate, robotic answer about rivalries and marketing. She compared the situation to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in the 80s. It was a disaster. The players were furious. They felt abandoned. They felt like the commissioner saw their pain as nothing more than a marketing metric to drive engagement. The union actually released a statement calling her leadership into question back then, but she survived it. She survived it because the owners thought she could still deliver the financial goods. But now, she has failed to deliver the financial goods. The owners brought Cathy Engelbert in from Deloitte. She was a corporate shark, a numbers person. Her job was to grow the business. And to her credit, the valuation of the league has skyrocketed. But a commissioner has 2 jobs: satisfy the owners and manage the talent. She completely failed to connect with the athletes who drive the business. You can't run a sports league if the players don't respect you. When the players publicly embarrassed the league by turning down this historic offer, it proved that Engelbert had lost all control. The owners realized that as long as Engelbert is sitting in the big chair, the players aren't going to sign. She has become a symbol of the old way of doing things, slow, corporate, and out of touch. Now the internet is lighting up with reports that Engelbert has resigned, while the league is scrambling to control the narrative, releasing vague statements about ongoing discussions. Insiders are claiming this wasn't a voluntary choice. The word is that the Board of Governors, the group of owners who actually run the league, are terrified of a lockout. They know the stakes. They know that without Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and the stars on the floor in 2026, their revenue tanks. The momentum the WNBA has built is fragile. If they miss a season, or even part of a season due to a labor dispute, they might never get this level of attention again. If the only thing standing between a signed deal and a lockout is the commissioner, then the commissioner has to go. It's likely being framed as a mutual parting of ways in the corporate press. You'll see statements thanking her for her service, citing the growth of the league and wishing her well. But let's be real, this looks like a forced exit. The timing is too perfect. The rejection of the CBA happened, the panic set in, and now the leader is leaving. The players demanded a change in leadership, implicitly or explicitly. And it looks like they finally got it. This is a massive victory for the Players Association. It shows that they have identified their leverage, and they are not afraid to use it. They realize that the product on the court is the only thing that matters. And without them, the suits in the office have nothing to sell. This moment proves that the power dynamic in women's basketball has comp. Ticket prices soared. Arenas sold out. Merchandise flew off the shelves. The players looked around and realized they were the ones generating the cash, yet they were still being treated like second-class citizens. And there is another massive factor that likely pushed Engelbert out the door. Unrivaled. This is the new 3-on-3 league, founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. This isn't just a side hustle, it is a direct threat to the WNBA's monopoly. Unrivaled is offering players huge equity, six-figure salaries for just a few weeks of work, and a player-first environment. It gave the players an alternative. Suddenly, the WNBA wasn't the only game in town. If the WNBA didn't pay up, the stars could go play in Miami for Unrivaled, make their money, and leave the WNBA in the dust. Engelbert tried to play hardball in a world where she no longer held the bat. She didn't realize that the monopoly was over. The failure to recognize the threat of Unrivaled is likely one of the reasons the owners lost faith in Engelbert. She seemed to underestimate the players' ability to organize and build their own infrastructure. The players created their own leverage. They didn't just ask for a bigger slice, they built their own bakery. This put the WNBA in a corner. They had to offer the world to keep their stars. And when they offered $1 million and were still told no, the owners realized they needed a new negotiator. They need someone who the players trust, someone who understands the modern landscape of athlete empowerment. Of course, you're already seeing the mainstream media try to spin this. They're calling the players greedy or ungrateful for turning down $1 million salary. You'll see headlines asking, "Is this too much too soon?" But don't fall for it. This isn't about greed, it's about math. When the league is signing deals worth hundreds of millions, and the players are capped at a fraction of that, it's not greed to ask for your fair share. The NBA players get roughly 50% of basketball-related income. The WNBA players have historically received a tiny fraction of that. The players aren't asking for money that doesn't exist. They're asking for the money they generated. The narrative of the greedy athlete is a tired trope used to turn fans against players during labor negotiations. But this generation of fans is smarter. They see the sold-out stadiums. They see the TV ratings beating the NBA in some slots. They know the money is there. The refusal of this deal exposed the fact that the league is still trying to hoard the profits while the women do the work. By rejecting the deal, the players stripped away the PR veneer and showed the business for what it is. And unfortunately for Kathy Engelbert, she was the face of that business. Let's talk about what happens next, because the resignation is just the beginning. If Engelbert is truly out, The WNBA faces a leadership vacuum at the most critical moment in its history. They have to find a new commissioner, and they have to do it fast. But who would want this job? It's a nightmare position. You have to negotiate with a union that smells blood in the water. You have to manage owners who are worried about their profit margins, and you have to do it all while the entire world is watching. The next commissioner will have to be a wartime leader. They will have to bridge a gap that feels like a canyon. There is also the looming threat of a lockout. If a new deal isn't signed soon, the 2026 season is in genuine peril. Imagine the catastrophe of canceling the season right after the biggest growth year in history. It would be business suicide. But the players have shown they are willing to risk it. They have saved their money. They have other income streams now. They are willing to sit out to get what they deserve. The owners are the ones who can't afford a lockout. They have debts to service, arenas to fill, and TV contracts to honor. The pressure is entirely on the league. This is why the resignation makes sense strategically for the owners. By removing Engelbert, they press the reset button. They can blame the stalled negotiations on her. They can bring in a new face and say, "We are starting fresh." It's a classic corporate maneuver. Sacrifice the leader to save the deal. It allows them to return to the table with the Players Association and say, "We heard you, we made changes, now let's talk." It might be the only card they have left to play to avoid a total collapse of the 2026 season. We also have to consider the Caitlin Clark factor in all of this. While she hasn't come out and publicly demanded Engelbert's firing, her silence speaks volumes. In the modern NBA or WNBA, the superstars run the show. If LeBron James wants a coach gone, the coach is gone. If Caitlin Clark felt that Engelbert was the right leader, she would have supported her. The fact that the biggest star in the sport, the woman who single-handedly reshaped the economy of the league, is standing with the union against the commissioner's offer tells you everything you need to know. Clark is not just a rookie, she is a power broker. And she just flexed her muscle. The other players are rallying too. You see the unity on social media. The Bet on Women slogan has turned into Pay Women. They are tired of the investment mode excuse. For years, the WNBA owners claimed they were losing money, so they couldn't pay players. But now that the money is pouring in, the players expect the excuses to stop. Engelbert's inability to pivot from survival mode to thriving mode was her ultimate failing. She was a great peacetime general, keeping the league afloat when times were tough. But she proved to be a terrible wartime general when the league exploded into prosperity. So, where does this leave us? If the reports hold true and Engelbert is out, the WNBA is entering dangerous territory. We are staring down the barrel of a potential lockout that could cancel the 2026 season. The players have drawn a line in the sand, and they aren't backing down. The commissioner might be the first casualty of this war, but she probably won't be the last. The entire structure of the league is being challenged. We might see ownership groups sell. We might see a complete restructuring of how the league operates. The next few weeks are going